Welcome to the Daily Gospel of John. Glad you're watching. We are finishing out chapter 13, looking at verses 36 through 38. Simon Peter asked him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus replied, "Where I am going you cannot follow now, but you will follow later." Peter asked, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Then Jesus answered, "Will you really lay down your life for me? I tell you the truth, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Wow. So Peter loved Jesus, that's indisputable. And he had a very fervent loyalty to Jesus as his Messiah and his King and his Rabbi. And he was serious. He meant with all his heart and all his human strength, I'm going to give you my all, Jesus. I'm going to lay it all down, and I'm willing to die for you. And I don't doubt that Peter meant that, because we see the next day and a half or so later, when Jesus is arrested in the garden by a detachment of 200 or so soldiers, Peter, the only one with a sword among the 12 there, pulls out his sword and starts fighting. Well, it's obvious you're going to die when you pull out a sword against 200 and you start swinging. But that's what Peter did. But he needed to come to understand something. And Jesus knew this had to happen. See, Peter was a person with a lot of natural, human, fleshly strength. Probably physically very strong. He had a strong personality. He was an alpha. He was always ready to dive in and tackle whatever was in front of him. And so he had a lot of trust in his own strength and in his own heart and in his own passion. And he thought that could carry him through. But Jesus knew better. See, we face spiritual battles and spiritual enemies that are far beyond our human capabilities to handle. And so, in a sense, God will allow us and maybe even orchestrate scenarios in which the best of our human strength, and we throw everything we have at it, isn't going to cut it. And we find ourselves left helpless. And we come to an important place of understanding there, if we'll allow God to teach us. And that is, in our weakness, we are strong. When we come to the end of ourselves, we begin to rely more on the Spirit within. As we come to the end of our own human resources and the arm of the flesh, we begin to trust in the hand of God and the resources and the power of the Almighty. And His sufficiency is always sufficient, and His grace is always sufficient for us. And so that's why Paul could say, when I am weak, then I am strong. Because I'm depending on a source that won't fail. See, Peter gave it his best, cut off the ear of one of the soldiers. And Jesus said, "Peter, put your sword away. I could deal with this if I wanted to. Put your sword away." And then Jesus healed the guy's ear. So Peter's like, what can I do? I'm just giving it my best. And Jesus said, that's not it. And so he took off. But God is so good. Jesus knew ahead of time Peter would fail. Jesus loved Peter anyway. Jesus knew Peter's heart. And so it was a blessing for Jesus to tell him ahead of time what was going to happen. So that when it did happen, Peter could think back and remember, Jesus told me this would happen. And He didn't condemn me. He knew that I would fall. And the same with us. I love looking and reading 1st and 2nd Peter, written by Peter. But you see this guy who was so almost arrogantly bold earlier in his life. You see such a humble writer as he writes in his epistles. And I want to read this from 1 Peter chapter 5. And he says, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time." See, you know what that's all about. "Cast all your care on Him, because He cares for you. Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." He knew about that as well. Spiritual forces of darkness that are way beyond our human ability to deal. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of sufferings. And then he says this, "And the God of all grace, That's that unmerited love and favor toward us. The God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, he will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Peter got it straight later on. It's all his grace. It's all his power. It's all his strength. We're on the receiving end. So we can look with eyes of faith and trust that whatever the future holds, that God, by his grace and his power, can make us strong. I get a little nervous when I hear some of the songs that we sing that, yeah, Lord, I'll be with you to the end, and I'm there. And, well, I always say a little prayer as I'm singing, oh, Lord, let this be true by your grace, because if it's about me clinging on to you and being strong to the end, I'll flub it in some way. So let's trust in the God who is and who has promised to see us through to the end.